the City of Troy to order. We're moving forward. We will start with the roll call. Mr. Evans, could you please call the roll?
Mr. Desmond.
Here.
Mr. Clark.
Here.
Mr. Courtney.
Here.
Mr. Eisenbacher.
Here.
Mr. Neal. Mr. Sanzika.
Here.
Mr. Lambert.
Here.
We do have quorum for this evening's business, so we will move forward. At this point in time, before we move on to item number 2, I'd like to call on Vice Chairman David Eisenbacher for the purposes of reading our procedures and policies for the board for disbursement for the general public. Mr. Vice Chairman.
The Zoning Board of Appeals is a group of 7 of your neighbors appointed by City Council to decide on requests for variances and other matters that are brought before them. A variance is a relaxation of the literal provisions of the zoning ordinance. Petitioners must indicate a hardship or practical difficulty with the land that would warrant the granting of a variance. Procedure. The board will hear the items in the order that they appear on the agenda. When an item is called, the chairman will verify that the petitioner is present. Then the city administration will summarize the facts of the case. The petitioner will be given an opportunity to address the board to explain the justification for the action requested. After the petitioner makes their presentation and answers any questions that the board may have, the chairman will open the public hearing. Any person wishing to speak on the request should raise their hand and, when recognized by the chairman, come up to the podium. The speaker should identify themselves with name and address, indicate their relationship to the property in question, for example, next door neighbor or live behind the property, and state whether they are in favor of or against the variance request and give reasons for their opinion. Comments must be directed through the chairman. Comments should be kept as brief as possible and closely pertain to the matter under consideration. Only one person will be recognized by the chairman to speak at one time. At the conclusion of public comments, the chairman will close the public hearing. Once the public hearing is closed, no other public comment will be taken unless in response to a specific question by a member of the board. The board will then make a motion to approve, deny, or postpone the request. In order for the request to pass, a minimum of 4 votes are needed. If the request is not granted, the applicant has the right to appeal the board's decision to the Oakland County Circuit Court.
Thank you, Vice Chairman Eisenbacher. So I would like to make introductions to the public that is present and, of course, at home as well, watching online. Up here at the meeting table, we have to my left, your far right, Mr. Lambert, who's a member of our board. Then one over is Vice Chairman Dave Eisenbacher. And this gentleman right here is Mr. Sanzika, who is also the liaison from the City Planning Commission. And to my right is Mr. Desmond. And to his right is Mr. Courtney. And then we have staff members from the City of Troy that are supporting the board's meeting tonight. And that first gentleman to Mr. Courtney's right is Mr. Evans, who is a liaison from the Planning Commission and from the Planning Department, I should say. And then to his right is Ms. Dufresne, who is an assistant city attorney for the City of Troy. And tonight she will serve as our legal advisor. Moving forward, we move on to item number 2, and that is the approval of the minutes from the September 15th meeting. Are there any questions or comment from a member of the board?
Move approval.
Mr. Sanzika?
I move to approve the minutes.
There's a motion for approval. Mr. Courtney, is there a second? There's a second by Mr. Courtney. Is there any discussion on the motion by a member of the board? Hearing none, Mr. Evans, I believe we're prepared for a vote.
Mr. Clark.
Yes.
Mr. Courtney.
Yes.
Mr. Eisenbacher.
Yes.
Mr. Neal. Mr. Sanzika.
Yes.
Mr. Lambert.
Yes.
Mr. Desmond.
Yes.
Motion passes. Moving on to item number 3, we have the agenda for discussion by the board. Are there any comments, questions, or suggested changes? Seeing none, we'll move on to item number 4, hearing of cases. Item A is a variance request related to Brett and Michelle Blanchard, 6805 Merrick in the City of Troy. And I'd like to call on Mr. Evans to present this particular applicant's case to us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to direct everyone's attention to the monitors to the left and right and behind the zoning board. As printed in the agenda, this is a variance request for property at 6805 Merrick in order to add a partially covered deck to the rear of the house, a 14.5-foot setback variance to the required 45-foot rear yard setback. Referring to the monitors, I have an aerial of the neighborhood. This property is located in an area south of South Boulevard and east of Coolidge. It's the property is outlined, I'm sorry, Crooks, thank you. And the property is outlined about in the middle in dark red. And I've zoomed in on the property, and it's near the corner of Merrick and Benjamin. And thank you. We're having some technical difficulties with the, we need a new projector lens, so it's hard for me to read up there. The property's at 6805 Benjamin. The surrounding properties are all used for single-family residential, with the exception of the property to the north, which I believe is used as a place of worship. Everything in the yellow designates zoning of single-family residential, so the subject property and all surrounding property is zoned single-family residential. Now, this is the site plan that they provided with their application, and Merrick is on the right. The outlined area to the left is a proposed deck, which is partially covered. And just to give some perspective, this is the back of the house, and they want to put the deck coming off to the left of the center of the house. There's another side view. And this was submitted with the application that shows the side view of the deck, and you can see the covered portion. And this is the west elevation with the covered portion on the right and the uncovered portion on the left. Now back to the site plan. The city code allows uncovered decks to encroach into a required rear yard setback up to 15 feet encroachment. Now, a portion of this deck is covered, so that portion of the deck needs the variance. The required rear setback for this structure would be, for the covered portion, would be 45 feet. It's going to encroach into that about 15 feet, so they're going to need a setback to accommodate for the 30-foot proposed, a setback variance to accommodate for the 30-foot setback. So I'll turn it back over to the board for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Are there any questions by members of the board for Mr. Evans or city staff? Here, Mr. Courtney.
Yes, would you go back to the drawing that shows the bigger area? I want to find where 879 Benjamin is.
.879 Benjamin, lower left-hand corner of this. Yeah.
Yeah, way over. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
That's what I thought, but I was not sure. Thank you.
Any other member? Seeing none, we can move on to the petitioner. If the petitioner is, or petitioners are present, please step forward and identify yourself to the board.
Michelle Blanchard.
Please step all the way forward to the microphone. Thank you.
Michelle Blanchard, homeowner at 6805 Merrick.
Good evening.
How are
Would you
you?
like to present your request to the board at this time?
Sure, the request, as Mr. Evans has said, is for the proposed variance to build a partially covered deck. Shall I read through the statements of practical difficulty?
Sure. You're going to have to make your case to the board now. So Mr. Evans can't do that for you, so you'll have to do that for yourself.
Okay.
Yep, please proceed.
So in our opinion, the characteristics of our property make compliance with the dimensional requirements more difficult than the surrounding properties due to the depth of our lot. The variance sought is at the same premises, 6805 Merrick, in which we feel the characteristics make the dimensional requirements difficult. They're solely due to the depth of the property. The statement of practical difficulty number 4 asks the characteristics which make compliance with dimensional requirements difficult must not have been created by the current or previous owner. We believe that the lot lines were established by the builder, which was Mondrian Properties. And just a statement, the proposed variance will not alter the character of the area or the property. In our opinion, it will enhance the look and value of our home without interfering with any adjacent properties. The deck and screened porch area will make will be made of materials that complement the home. And we've also shared our design plans with surrounding neighbors to ensure their approval. In the application packet, what we did was we walked around to the neighbors and showed them and shared the plans and had them sign off, saying, yes, we approve. We don't feel it will, inhibit or diminish the character of their properties. Which I didn't submit in the initial package, but I don't know if I can submit it now or if it's
No,
too
you
late.
can submit anything you like, and the best option would be to start with Mr. Lambert, and then they'll pass any other information along, and then we'll just deposit it with Mr. Evans when we're finished, for the record. Thank you. And can you also, when you're back at the microphone, can you also, the document that you were referencing regarding your neighbors who signed, it's very faint as far as the image, so can you just read us the total number of your neighbors that signed that document? Sure. Just for the record.
The total number of signatures that we acquired were 8.
Okay, thank you.
So what I did here on page 1 was I circled the homes that signed off on our little petition. One of the homes was on Jasmine. I didn't circle that. I didn't think that they were close enough or relevant to the discussion, so I didn't bother. But so I circled 7 homes on the picture here. I know that there was questions regarding the address 879, so I circled that home in red. I was forwarded an email that Mr. Solak had written voicing his concerns. I did reply to him, asked him if, he wanted my husband and I to come over. They were more than welcome to come over, and we would review the drawings with them, but I did not hear back from Mr. Solak. I have driven by his house many times and walked around the back of our property, and he has no view of our backyard from his property. At best, he can see our driveway from a portion of his driveway, but none of our backyard.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for this petitioner from a member of the board? Mr. Courtney?
Yes, the total the total porch is going to be covered, isn't it?
No, just a portion. So when we walk out.
What portion?
Let's see. Yeah, can you, right there, go back one. Okay. So that's if you're looking at the back of our home. If we're walking out the sliding glass doors, you'd walk into the screened-in gazebo type area.
Yeah.
And that is the portion that we're seeking the variance on. If it was just a full deck, it would have been approved, but because there's a roof on it, that's why we need the variance. And then the deck will extend out to the north end of the home.
Any other members for this petitioner? Mr. Lambert?
Just one question, and I think you stated it. The main difficulty that you have for requesting the variance is that your property is oddly sized compared to the other properties in your neighborhood. It's a little bit smaller, is that
Yes,
correct?
that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, seeing there aren't any other members with questions for you, ma'am, if you could have a seat, I'd appreciate that.
Thank you.
Very much. And at this time, I'm going to call the public hearing open related to this case. If you would like to address the board and you're a member of the general public, please step forward to the microphone and state your opinion, please. Your name and your your relationship to the property, if any.
Okay, my name's Steve Schneider, and I live directly across the street. If you go back to the one shot, I'm at 6792. And I'm just here in concern. Since 2010, we've had a lot of new builds up and down Merrick and down Benjamin. And I would hope that everybody would start investing into the exterior of their homes. People have been kind of reluctant, slow on the trigger as far as doing things to their landscaping. I've actually put a covered porch on the back of our home, my wife and I, and it actually increased our property value. So I would hope that this variance would be allowed to pass, because I think it's only a good thing for the neighborhood, and I hope it motivates other neighbors to maybe pick up the pace and invest some money, because I think it makes everything look more beautiful. So, all
Thank you very much.
right, thank you.
Are there any other members of the public who would like to address the board on this matter? Okay, seeing that there isn't any other members of the public, we're going to close that portion of the public hearing. Yes, Mr. Evans?
And if I could just direct your attention possibly to, we received the public comment in the
Oh, we're just-
package.
Yeah.
You're on
Just
that.
getting that.
Very good.
Yes. So I'd like to call on Vice Chairman Eisenbacher to address any public comment via communication electronically or through U.S. mail.
We received one, or the city received one email from the neighbor down the street at 879 Benjamin, which was an opposed. But then, as the petitioner mentioned, there was they had circulated their own petition with the neighbors, and I didn't get a count yet on how many signatures there were. 8 approval signatures of their neighbors who were the most adjacent neighbors.
Thank you. So now at this point in time, we'll bring it back to the board for discussion, comment, or further questions, either of the petitioner or staff. Mr. Lambert.
Mr. Chairman, based upon the information provided, especially the unusual size of the parcel and the fact that the immediately adjacent neighbors have no objection to the variance, I would move that we approve the variance for this petitioner.
I support.
Motion made by Mr. Lambert, seconded by Mr. Desmond in support of approval. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, Mr. Evans, I believe we're prepared for a vote.
Mr. Courtney,
Yes?
Mr. Eisenbacher,
Yes.
Mr. Sanzika.
Yes.
Mr. Lambert.
Yes.
Mr. Desmond,
Yes.
Mr. Clark.
Yes. Congratulations, you have your variance. And I would like just to point out, which I failed to do to the successful applicant and others who are on the agenda tonight, we are not a full board tonight, and that simply means that if you do have further business in front of the board, you have a right to request that we postpone the matter until all 7 members are present. Seeing that we obviously have 6, we definitely have quorums. We can conduct important business here tonight, but you do have the right to request. It does not mean that the board will guarantee or approve that request for a future date, but that is left to you to request if you see fit. Moving forward, we have the next item related to item B, variance request from Sylvia and Zoran Inick, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, hopefully I am, related to 6285 Rochester Road. Mr. Evans, do you have information related to this application?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. This property, as you indicated, is located at 6285 Rochester, as printed in the agenda. In order to construct, in addition to the house, a 15.84-foot variance to the required 40-foot front yard setback, I'd like to direct everybody's attention to the monitors once again, where I've got an aerial of the neighborhood with the property outlined in red. This property is on the west side of Rochester Road, north of Square Lake Road. The property is used for single-family residential, as is all the surrounding property across the street. Rochester Road is Rochester Via Apartments. The subject property and all surrounding property on the same side of Rochester Road is zoned single-family residential, and the property across Rochester Road is zoned residential attached. Now they're requesting setback from the front yard, variance from the front yard setback requirements in order to add on to the front of their house to give everybody some perspective. This is a photo of the front of the house, and that's the area that they're going to basically pull forward 4 feet, 4.3 feet. This is a proposed elevation plan, and the area of addition is outlined in red. And this is their site plan. So they're going to extend out towards Rochester Road just a little over 4 feet. So the required front yard setback is normally 40 feet. After this addition is completed, the setback is going to be 24.16 feet from Rochester Road. So they're requesting a variance of 15.84 feet. I'll turn it back over to the board for any questions.
Any questions from a member of the board? Mr. Courtney?
Yes. Is this identical to the request that passed the board a couple of years ago?
Yes, it is. As a matter of fact, many of the documents are the exact same documents.
Exactly the same. Thank you.
Any other members' questions or comments on this matter? Seeing that there isn't, we will move forward with calling the petitioner or petitioners forward. Please identify yourself to the board and your relationship to the property. Good evening.
My name is Silvana Enoch, and I am the owner of that property, 6285 Rochester Road.
Would you like to,
Yes, as they mentioned, 3 years ago, we applied for a variance, and it was approved. Unfortunately, tough times happened. I lost my job and other issues with family matters. But we are ready to go right now, and I definitely need to have that completed, constructed, because it's just a mess. It's a boxed window, excuse me, and underneath there's no footings whatsoever. So we kind of want to have a stable footing and bump it out 4 feet, and have a good window there for the kids, because I'm afraid that something could happen. The window is very old. It's plastered right now with tape, excuse me, and I definitely need to get it done. This past winter, it was a rough winter, so I had to have plastic covering on it, and it not only looks bad, but it's horrible. The deck, the patio, or not the patio, but the porch itself had like plywood on it. The gentleman who lived there before obviously couldn't fix it. My mom almost had her foot go through it just recently, so we put a new plywood on top, but that definitely is not a solution for it, so that's all. And nothing has changed from the 3 years ago. Everything is pretty much the same thing that we've requested previously, and no other changes really. Excuse me.
are there any questions or comments by a member of the board for the petitioner? Seeing none, if you could have a seat, please.
Thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you. So at this point in time, we're going to open the public hearing related to item B. If you'd like to address the board related to this item, please step forward to the microphone and identify yourself. Seeing that there isn't anyone coming forward, we'll close the public hearing and call on Vice Chairman Eisenbacher to address any communication, either mailed or emailed to the board.
I can see none in the packet and none on the table. Correct me if I'm wrong.
You are
Okay.
correct.
Okay.
Thank you. So at this point in time, we'll bring it back to the board, and if there are any questions, comments, or a motion made by a member, now is the time to do that. Mr. Lambert?
Just one question for staff. Do we need to verbally cite any findings at this meeting tonight, or can we just say, based upon what was disclosed at the previous meeting, we reiterate that finding?
I think it'd be safe just to reiterate the findings tonight, since it has been a few years.
Is there a member of the board who would like to address that? Mr. Lambert?
I'll give it a shot here. I would move that we approve the variance based upon the unusual narrow configuration of the piece of property, the fact that the variance would only impact out onto Rochester Road, and the third finding would be that there is no opposition from any of the neighbors.
Support.
Mr. Eisenbacher seconded that motion, so the Lambert-Eisenbacher motion has been made. Are there any comments or discussion by members at this time on the motion? Seeing that there isn't, Mr. Evans, I believe we're prepared to vote.
Mr. Eisenbacher?
Yes.
Mr. Sanzika?
Yes.
Mr. Lambert?
Yes.
Mr. Desmond?
Yes.
Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Mr. Courtney?
Yes.
Congratulations, you have your variance. Have a good evening. Moving on to item number C, we have variance requests related to Florian Bichet, 3459 Talbot. Mr. Evans, could you present the information for this item?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As printed in the agenda, this is a variance request for 3459 Talbot in order to construct an attached garage that has a second floor, 1, a 4-foot variance to the required 25-foot front yard setback, and 2, a 296-square-foot variance to the requirement that the floor area of the garage not exceed 75% of the ground floor footprint of the living area of the dwelling. 75% of the ground floor area of the living area of the dwelling is 828 square feet. I'd like to direct everybody's attention to the overheads again. The subject property is located in a neighborhood north of East Big Beaver and east of Livernois, and the overhead is outlined in red. It's on the west side of Talbot. It's the last house on the west side before Talbot ends at the north. The subject property and all surrounding property is used as single-family residential with the exception of the vacant property north and west of the subject property. And I've overlaid the zoning classification for all the surrounding property. The subject property and all the surrounding property is zoned single-family residential. This is the site plan they provided, and Talbot is to the right, and they're proposing to add a garage onto the existing house. I've outlined the garage in red, and the zoning ordinance requires that that garage be set back at least 25 feet from the front property line. They're proposing to have it set back 21 feet, so they need a 4-foot variance from the front yard setback. So that's variance number 1. Second variance request, and this will help illustrate it, they're having a second story on top of the garage. So as we can see from these elevation photos, especially the east elevation, the scaling of what they want to do. And in this site plan here, to the left is the ground floor outline of the proposal, and to the right illustrates the second story addition, which is about 450 square feet. Now, the city zoning ordinance limits the floor area for attached garages, and that limit is 75% of the ground floor area of the house. So when you do the numbers, they're requesting an additional 1,124 square feet of garage floor area. The ground floor footprint, 75% of that of the house is 828 square feet. So in order to build what they want to do, they're going to need a 296 square foot variance for the floor area. So with that, I'll turn it back over to the board for any questions.
Mr. Courtney?
Yes, this is different than it was originally approved, isn't it?
Right. The way it was originally approved did not include the second story.
Although the building looks better with the second story, but I just wanted to make sure it was, thank you.
Any other members? Mr. Lambert?
Mr. Evans, is this the second variance that we would need to find? Is this considered to be the monster garage restriction that the council and planning commission put in a number of years ago?
I wasn't here, so I don't know.
Monster Garage was much, much bigger.
Well, I know, yeah, but I know it was a lot bigger, but I'm wondering
It's my
if this is the
understanding
restriction.
that the case you're referring to on Alpine, that there were no limitations on the size of accessory structures. I believe that one was a detached accessory structure, but no?
It was attached.
It was attached, okay. So it's pretty likely that this this code is a offshoot of that.
Thank you.
Any other members? Okay, I would believe we're prepared to hear from Ms. Bichet or her representative. Please come forward.
Guess I can serve as both, her spouse and representative. My name is Amir Bichet, and I live at, I'm a homeowner at 3459 Talbot, along with my spouse. I think Paul did a good job of summarizing kind of the variance that we're seeking. I never quite thought of it as a monster garage, but the intent was that we would just include some non-conditioned bonus space above the garage. Paul brought up that that could exceed the square footage. However, it's kind of an interesting provision in the code because it doesn't identify whether it's conditioned square footage or whether it's based on the actual footprint of the home. So I don't know if it necessarily applies, but Paul felt that it would be prudent to maybe bring it to the board's attention. I don't know if you guys have enough context as to why we're requesting the variance, but I think that was more or less covered in the previous request. Did you have any other questions or?
Thank you. Are there any questions by the members of the board for this petitioner? Mr. Lambert?
Just one, were you the petitioner the last time this came in front of us a couple of years ago?
Yes.
So what you did essentially this time is you just added that second floor above the garage area?
Yeah, exactly. I wouldn't consider, again, it's unconditioned space at this point. The intent is that it would just be for bonus storage. So it's not even a full 8-foot or a full second floor, I guess, is the way the architect kind of laid it out.
Well, I know originally I was kind of concerned because of the monster garage exception, but then when Paul put the drawing up there, it looks like there's only 2 vehicles that can fit in there. So the only thing that comes to mind is it fits in because your home is small relative to the garage and the second floor space. So
Yeah.
I would hazard a guess at this time that I don't think this was exactly what council and the planning commission had in mind when they were talking about monster garages. So.
Any other members for this petitioner? Okay, you can, Mr. Courtney.
Yeah, if I understand it right, the only reason for the square footage is that you have a loft storage area at the top of your garage.
Exactly. I think
If you didn't have that, then you'd just be back to the side yard problem.
front yard, yes. Yeah, front yard setback
Yeah.
is what we're seeking, yeah.
Since I have a loft in my garage and I think it's useful.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? This petitioner? Thank you. You can have a seat.
Thank you.
So at this point in time, we'll open the public hearing related to item C. If you'd like to address the board, please step forward to the microphone and identify yourself. Seeing that we don't have any customers in that regard, we're going to close the public hearing and bring it back to the board. Are there any comments, questions for staff, or a motion that a member would like to make? Mr. Eisenbacher?
Yes, I was on the city council when the whole monster garage thing came up, and this is the unintended consequence that we did actually discuss at that time, is if you have a small house, this 75% rule is going to overly impact you.
Yep.
And from my memory, the fix for that was to come to this board and get a variance.
This is the fix.
Yeah, so this is the fix. Yeah, this is not a monster garage. It is not anywhere near a violation of the intent of putting that 75% rule in place. It's 2 cars plus a little bit of storage and an upstairs. It looks good on the drawings with the house, and with the floodplain concerns they have to the rear of the property. I believe that the front setback, allowing variance to the front setback to allow them to utilize their property, given the floodplain in the rear, which is well outside of their control, would be fully appropriate. I'd like to, if there's no further discussion, I would like to move the resolution, given the floodplain constraint on the property for an unusual natural characteristic, and that it's no complaints from the neighbors. And I can't remember the other couple items that we have to. Cover.
Mr. Chairman, I support the motion.
Okay.
Is the motion fully made, Vice Chairman Eisenbacher?
Oh,
I think he was
Our set
pausing
of-
Mr. Sanzika.
well, our set of rules isn't in the agenda this time.
Ooh.
I have to look at the last agenda, but that covered enough.
Okay, then Mr. Sanzika seconds that motion. So before we take any further discussion, we kind of jumped ahead and we didn't ask Vice Chairman Eisenbacher for any communications from the public on this matter.
I could not see any in the agenda or on the table for this item.
Okay, thank you. Any other, or any comments on the motion by a member of the board at this time? I just have a question, which I think I know the answer to for Mr. Evans. So if it's my understanding, if this petitioner didn't do this, variance request, but rather for that second floor bonus area that their architect created for them, if that architect had drawn up plans to make that space, that second floor space, attached to the home, however that could have been done, cutting into the roof and so forth, this rule wouldn't apply, right? Because that's adding more square footage
Right, so
to the
for
home.
example,
So this is
there's-
only vis-à-vis a garage.
You can only enter it through the
Right.
existing garage, through the floor. Had there been, say, a hallway or something that would connect
Right.
it to the living area, well, then it would be considered living area and part of the house,
Right.
part of the garage.
Thank you. So that's just my point to my fellow board members that, if these petitioners decided to make a larger home, instead of making that space where they're going to store perhaps holiday, Christmas decorations or family items versus a bonus room heated and cooled by the home furnace and air conditioning, this wouldn't even be before us here tonight. So I would just speak in favor of the motion at this point in time. Any other comments by another member under discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Evans, I believe we're prepared for a vote.
Mr. Sanzika?
Yes.
Mr. Lambert?
Yes.
Mr. Desmond?
Yes.
Mr. Clark?
Yes,
Mr. Courtney?
Yes?
Mr. Eisenbacher?
Yes.
congratulations, you have your variance. Have a very good night. So we'll move on to item number D, which is variance requests from David and Claudine Antone, 1881 through 1977 West South Boulevard, AKA 6966 Crooks Road. And we'd like to ask Mr. Evans to address the board on this matter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As printed in the agenda, this is a variance request for property at 1881 to 1977 West South Boulevard, also known as 6966 Crooks, in order to make an existing wireless communications tower approximately 21 feet taller, a 16-foot variance to the requirement that the tower be set back 122 feet from all property lines. The zoning ordinance requires the setback of the tower be equal to the height of the tower. The proposed height of the tower will be 122 feet. I'd like to direct everybody's attention to the monitors. This property is located on the south side of South Boulevard, east of Crooks. I've outlined it in red. Zooming in on the property, and I've circled the existing wireless communications tower in this aerial. The subject property and property to the south and west are zoned neighborhood node U, and the property to the east is zoned single-family residential. It should be noted that the property to the south is used as a Michigan Bell. Well, it's owned by Michigan Bell. I believe it's used for some sort of telecommunications purpose. And this is the site plan they provided. In the middle of the site plan, I pointed out the tower location. And that's a rendering of what they want to do. They want to add a combination of structures and lightning rods to the top of the tower that will add no more than 21 feet to the existing height of the tower, which is right now is 101.9 feet tall. Now, what the code says is that the tower has to be set back at a minimum of the height of the tower. Since they're raising the tower to 122 feet, the existing setback, if they build this way, the setback from the south property line would be 106.6 feet, so they need a 15.5-foot setback variance from the south property line. Now, They're also going to only be 114 feet from the west property line, so they would need an 8-foot variance from the west property line. So I'll turn it back over to the board for any questions.
Any questions of Mr. Evans of this variance request by members of the board? Mr. Lambert?
Just one, I want to make sure I understand that circular dotted line is the fall zone if we approve the variance.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Any other members? Okay, we will ask the petitioners to step forward, or their representative. Please identify yourself to the board in relationship to the application and the property.
My name is Jonathan Crane. I'm a civil engineer and an attorney, and I'm here tonight on behalf of Verizon Wireless. With me is David Anton. David is the applicant who made the application on behalf of Verizon Wireless. He did the site selection work and negotiating to get on the tower. I did the legal work on negotiating the lease and hopefully getting a variance tonight. This is an infill to add capacity and service for Verizon Wireless for the residents in your community. This is our existing current coverage. Each of these circles is a cell tower in your community. Yeah, it might be appropriate. What we are doing is we are adding an antenna right here to add service to your residential. You see we have complete coverage along the expressways, so on and so forth. This is infill for into the neighborhoods in the community. When we started, we were just dealing with voice communications, simply talking on your cell phone. Now we're doing tremendous amounts of data, photography, GPS, and soon to be entertainment. The wireless handheld is taking the place of the copper wire going into your home. This is to increase service. Your ordinance is somewhat, and I don't mean to slight you, but old, in that they required a setback equal to the tower height, as it was referred to as the fall zone. You have not heard of any monopole antennas falling, not in Troy, not in southeast Michigan, and not in the Midwest. We've had them take Hurricane Andrew, where they had sustained wind loads in excess of 130 miles an hour, and not one antenna failed. They're very rigid structures. What we are doing is proposing to put an addition on this tower so that we don't have to build another one in your community. I think that's the intent of your ordinance. That's your intent of everybody else. This is a shared use site currently, and we're going to add capacity and services to it. We looked at locating at the lower levels, and I can show you the coverage plots, but it simply just does not do the job. It did not meet our needs, and we'd probably end up putting in 2 or 3 antennas if we went on this at the 60 or 70 foot levels. I'll answer any questions. We will provide, at the time of seeking our building permit, all the appropriate structural foundation, strength of tower, and so on, documentation to assure you that it meets all applicable codes. I'll answer any questions. We have our site plan. It's interesting that Ameritech owns, or AT&T owns the property to the south. I wasn't aware of that until you brought that out tonight. It's interesting that they put their pole on the other property, but that's the way it goes. But thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Crane. Are any comments or questions for this petitioner? Mr. Courtney?
Yeah, I actually have 2 questions. One is, if the tower fell completely out, what would it hit?
If the tower, well, the towers are designed so that they buckle.
Yeah, but if it fell complete, what would it hit?
Completely, what would it hit? It might hit a building on our property, or it hit the parking lot in the adjacent property. If it went over it like that.
It wouldn't go, it can't possibly stretch to that next building.
No.
Okay, the other question is, if you don't use this site, where would you go?
Probably the next shopping center over.
Okay.
Quite frankly, we've been looking in this area. This is the obvious solution to the problem.
Thank you.
Any other members? Mr. Lambert?
Just one quick question. You said this is a shared tower. What other carriers utilize this tower?
AT&T, Sprint, And T-Mobile.
Thank you.
Now Verizon. Full house.
SBA owns the tower. We're just going to co-locate on it.
Okay, thank you.
Other members? Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. You can have a seat.
Thank you.
So at this point in time, we are going to open up the public hearing related to item D. If you'd like to address the board, please step forward to the microphone. Seeing that there isn't anyone coming forward, we'll close the public hearing and call on Vice Chairman Eisenbacher related to any communications on this matter from the public.
I saw, wasn't clear what the one on the table was. Okay. I did not see any items for this one on the table or in our agenda packet or in emails.
Okay, thank you. So now we move, we bring this back to the board's table and ask a member of the board to make a comment, state a question, or make a motion. Vice Chairman Eisenbacher.
My comment would be is that it's much preferred to co-locate more cell phone carriers on the same tower. There's already 3 on the tower. This allows 1 more to be added, which is the minimal impact on everyone in the area. And minimal impact also improves the improved impact of being able to get more coverage for those users.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mr. Mr. Evans.
Yes, in light that the standards are not in your packet, I have put them on the overheads if that assists the members in deliberating or crafting a motion.
After reading that information, Mr. Eisenbacher, are you still making your motion?
Yes, I would like to
Okay.
make a motion to approve for the exceptional characteristic being that there is a tower already on site, and with this variance, it allows a 4th user to be placed on the tower without needing to relocate the tower. And for the second item, it is related to the premises being requested. It is not of a personal nature. And for the item E, there was no complaints from any of the adjacent neighbors. And as the gentleman mentioned, the safety risk of a tower falling down is very minimal, given the engineering of the mast, as he mentioned, and given our potential wind speed since we're not in a hurricane zone.
Support.
Motion made by Mr. Eisenbacher, seconded by Mr. Courtney. Is there discussion on this matter, on the motion? Mr. Eisenbacher, you said something about relocating the tower. I think you were kind of saying, or creating a new tower
yeah.
site. Yes, I understood. Okay. Any other discussion on this matter? Seeing none, I believe Mr. Evans, we're prepared for a vote.
Mr. Sanzica?
Yes.
Mr. Lambert?
Yes.
Mr. Desmond?
Yes.
Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Mr. Courtney?
Yes.
Mr. Eisenbacher?
Yes.
Motion passes. Congratulations, you have your variance. At this point in time, we move on to item number 5, which are communications. Are there any communications, Mr. Evans, that the board should be aware of?
On your days before you tonight is just an email from the planning director, Mr. Sabadan, in response to the board's concern last month about the status of some zoning ordinance changes that this board forwarded to the planning commission some time back.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions on this communication by the members of the board since it was at our desks? Seeing none, we'll move on to item number 6, miscellaneous business. Are there any other matters for the board, Mr. Evans? Okay, we can move on to item number 7, public comment. If you'd like to address the board, please step forward to the podium in the microphone. Seeing that there aren't any members of the public left in the gallery, we'll close that portion out, and we'll wish everybody a great rest of their October and see you all in November. Have a good night.